You're listening to Psych with Mike. For more episodes or to connect with the show with comments, ideas, or to be a guest, go to www.psychwithmike.com. Follow the show on Twitter @PsychWithMike or like the Facebook page @PsychWithMike. Now, here's Psych with Mike.
Older every day.
Welcome into the Psych with Mike Library. This is Dr. Michael Mahan, and I am here with Mr. Brett Newcomb, who apparently is getting older every day.
Every single day.
Are you okay with that?
Well, it's better than the alternative.
I was just going to say.
That's the most I have to say for it.
That's right. The alternative is not good. Is not desirable.
I don't know. Maybe it's the most wonderful thing that can ever happen.
Well, I guess that's true. I guess no one's ever come back to tell us, and so maybe it is. I don't have any reason to believe it's not.
Elizabeth Kubler-Ross could have an interesting conversation with you around that.
Because she believes that it's better or not better?
Because she believes that she has studied, she studied death,
right,
and the death experience,
right,
around the world as it was reported by,
right,
people that died, being declared dead, and then revived. And she studied their commonality of experiences.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
The one thing that sticks out to me about all the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross stuff is that she said everybody that had died reported and revived reported the sound of the rushing train, going towards the light, being in the presence of God, but no fear after that of death, except those that had committed suicide, died and been revived, and they reported none of those experiences. So that's interesting to me.
That is very interesting.
Yeah.
So I have been intentionally studying Carl Jung, his writings, the things that he believed. I find that as I get older, that I have more in common with him than any other theorist that I am aware of. And so a part of that is Jung's, I don't want to say tendency, but his attempt to try and categorize people into subtypes. And my sense is that you don't think that people are so easily pigeonholed.
I think one of the differences between us is you look for global answers and solutions. You want to have a formula or an encapsulated resolution to everything. And I am more comfortable with a whole lot of ambivalence and uncertainty. I don't need that, and I don't look for that. I look for adaptation, growth, and survival. You look for, but what's the period at the end of the sentence? And can we put a label on it, and then we put it on a shelf and know that that's what that is? And so if somebody comes in and they says, oh, I'm really suffering with anxiety, you go pick out the anxiety book and say, well, here's what you need to do. And I'm like, well, let's talk about that. How bad is it? Why are you feeling that way? And whatever. So I think I am less needful of certainty than you are. And I think you look for what would satisfy your need for certainty. And I think some of Jung's stuff about the shadow self, because when you find something going on that you're not happy with, well, then you can just tell it's your shadow. And to me, that isn't producing the same results.
So in what way? Because what I would say is that it reduces my anxiety, because my anxiety is built on cognitive dissonance, the inability for the human brain to comfortably hold two conflicting thoughts. If I can resolve the conflict, so if I can say, oh, that's a part of my shadow, and I see that, and I may not be able to do anything to eliminate that, but I can live with it because I see that that's what it is, that for me reduces anxiety.
Okay. See, I don't have a need to be the same as you. I'm okay to be different.
No, but it isn't about, I would argue that it can serve a function, because different people are different.
But Mike, that one of our differences, and we talk about this all the time, is you have a real need to explain to people what you know, what you've learned, what you understand about why things are the way they are. I don't have the same need to do that, and I think that's part of why we're different. And I don't lecture and resolve the way you do when you are counseling someone.
So it's just different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not wrong. It's just different.
But do you believe, whether you find value, and what we're talking about is, I sent you an article on the Enneagram and how the personality type that you may be, according to the Enneagram, may suggest things that which are a part of your
strategies for the way that you cope. Yeah.
And do you believe that there could be value in that for some people?
Yeah, for some people, absolutely.
And so, but you wouldn't use it in therapy.
No.
Yeah. And so
I didn't. I never did.
So even if that were something that would be valuable for some people, it wouldn't be your natural state to try and use that. But do you think that there could be any validity to it?
So in my experience, people come in with that stuff because they've been on the web or they've done research or whatever. And they come in and they say, well, what do you think about this? Well, am I a 6 or am I a 4 or am I a 3? And I say, well, okay, let's sit down the Enneagram for a minute and let's talk about the Myers-Briggs. What are you? Or let's put that down and talk about the MMPI. Where do you fall? Or let's put that down and talk about the Lauscher color test, 16 color test, the 8 color test, the 4 color test. Those things to me are intellectual shorthand for resolving anxiety for people that need a label. Oh, I know what that is. I remember my oldest son was sick as a child, very sick, had seizures from high fevers. And we were really worried about him, and I was sitting in his bedroom talking to him, and all of a sudden he sat up and he just threw up all over the bedspread. And his eyes got so large, and he just panicked. And I'm like, calm, because he'd not ever thrown up before that he was aware of. And I'm trying to calm him down, tell him it's okay, we'll get it all cleaned up, it's not a problem. And all of a sudden he had an aha moment, and he was like, I know what that is. It's throw up. And he was just absolutely comforted because he could put a label on it and it calmed him down. That's how I see you. That you can come up with a label and you can identify it with an authority. Whether you're a 6 on the Enneagram or your Jungian shadow self is saying this, that helps you. If I know that helps you, I'm good to talk that way.
But it sounds like that what you're saying is, though, that it helped your son.
Yeah, but he's not me.
No. Right.
It doesn't help me.
So they're different.
But I can hear that it helps somebody else.
Yeah.
And so that's part, to me, the challenge of therapy. I need to learn the language you use and the way you see the world so that I can talk to you in concepts that you hear and that you can embrace. If I try to false feed you something that you can't accept, then we're working at counter positions. So I would, if you were my client and you wanted to discuss whether or not you could be a 6 on the Enneagram, I would read up on it and we would have a conversation about, well, what makes you think that way and where do you see that and how does that play out and how does that help your life get better if you accept that, or how does it worse if you don't accept it? So, because again, I'm looking at how can we make progress so that your life is better, that you experientially can look at me and say, you know what, I'm better now.
So did you find anything in the article that you would agree with, like a
Oh, I'd agree. You know, it's like a horoscope. I can read all 9 of those things and say every one of them could be me.
Yeah, or could be anybody.
Could be anybody. I think so. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. If you come in and you're really attached to being a 4, then we need to talk about, well, what does a 4 look like and how pervasive is that in your life? And is there something you can do to be more 4-ish? And will that be helpful?
Or have you been under a false impression? Yeah. Because I think that sometimes people read stuff in psychology and they say, "Oh, I think that's me," or they want it to be them.
In my experience, they more often say, "That's you."
Yeah.
I read this and now I understand you.
And then they adopt that as a truism and as an identity.
Right.
And what if it's not?
Well, that's why we were taught not to ever do labeling. You know, you don't. see the label of depression, and oh, you're depressed. You say you have depression. You're dealing with depression, but it's not all of you. It's not who you are. You are not Mike the depressed.
So I thought
Yalom. Yalom taught us that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought that this article was really good because I'm very much into the Enneagram.
You're into that stuff, right?
And if we were just going to look at one, I'm a 3.
Okay.
And I know that.
Help me. What's a 3?
So 3 is achiever, and I will read you the short blurb that they have in the article.
So like the horoscopes, they give you the positive descriptors.
Yeah.
Unlike the horoscopes, at the end, they give you the negative concern.
Yeah.
So ideally, as a therapist, if you came in and said, well, I'm a 3, then I would want to talk to you about the negative implications of the 3, which would be like the last sentence. Am I correct? Okay. All right.
So ambitious and determined, you're someone who longs to climb the ladder of success. However, in the process, you tend to resist recognizing your own feelings of emptiness and self-rejection. Deep down, you carry a heavy emotional burden. This burden is the feeling of not being valued for who you are, only feeling valued for what you do. You tend to distrust love, loyalty, and friendship because you worry that at your core, people don't genuinely love you.
Oh, fine. So you don't trust me to care for you.
Well, but I think that's how I've always conceptualized.
Well, I have to keep proving it over and over again. People get tired of proving it.
Yeah, and so what they talk about is that the emotions that you run away from as a 3 are shame, and that resonates with me very, very genuinely.
Right.
And so I don't know that I would say
So if you can accumulate enough markers to reflect your value, if you can have enough licensures and titles.
So if I could write enough books, if I could teach enough classes,
money,
and be at a more prestigious university, and
you could even sell some NFT trading cards.
I could do that. Yeah. I wish I knew somebody who was into that could guide me.
Well, if you look, I'm sure you can find it.
That's a tangential kind of remark about something that's happened in the news this week.
It's possibly, yeah.
But I hear your point of don't put
the label is not the person.
Emphasis on the label, because that isn't a complete description of me.
Yeah.
While I am insecure about, do people really love me? Am I really worthy? I also genuinely have some real aspects of confidence and genuine self-esteem.
Yes.
So I'm not just one side of that coin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so and I would say that to anybody that was in therapy, that even if you believe that these things are accurate descriptors, don't create a self-fulfilling prophecy where that's all you are.
Or don't see it as universal.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't work.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit more about people who come to therapy with these preconceived ideas about what they think they are or what they think they know. How do you approach that and say, maybe there's more to this than meets the eye?
So I spent 30 plus years teaching people to be a counselor in a couple different university programs. And one of the conversations that we would have every semester for people who said, I'm going to get this degree, I'm going to get this license, I'm going to go out and I'm going to help people, I'm on a mission from God, is what are the skill sets that you need? Mm-hmm. Can you reject people that offend you? Can you reject people just automatically that you take one look at and say, oh, I can't deal with this person? Mm-hmm. What does it say about you, not about them? And what does it say about your propensity and skill sets for being a therapist? Because I can't label you. If I'm going to be a therapist, in my personal life, I can do it. In my professional life, I can't do it. Mm-hmm. So I'm not required to be openly wonderful to everybody. I have neighbors I don't like. I have people at the grocery store that I look at. I sometimes saw teenage kids when I was teaching high school, like just walk up and slap. I mean, there's just some visceral reaction to this kid and the way they present themselves that makes me want to just pop them one. Now, I never did that, but as a clinician, if that kid came to me or was sent to me, I have to come to grips with, how can I see this person as the person they are and not as my image? And so I have to learn to listen. I have to learn to try to understand. And what I would say to my students is, what I found is if I spend enough time paying attention to you, I will learn to have some respect and affection for you, even if I don't approve of every behavior you have or everything about you. Same thing I would say to my child, raising my child. I don't 100% love everything about you, but I love you, and I am willing to spend time with you and try to be helpful to you, because I think there's benefit for both of us in that. Not just for you. Not I'm the savior, I can fix you, I can help you. But I think we both grow and learn from spending this time together and evaluating these concepts. So if you come to me and say, I'm a 3, and I'm like, okay, what does it say about challenges that 3s have? Okay, and then outside of that arena, what kind of challenges do you have?
So let's go to our break, and then when we come out of that, I'm going to ask you a question.
All right.
If you've gotten this far into the show, then obviously you find the show to be worthwhile, beneficial, maybe even helpful. And so I just wanted to say, if you've gotten this far into the show and you want to help us out, even if you don't want to help us out, just do it anyway. Go to Apple Podcasts and rate us and leave a review. That is super helpful. Subscribe to the show on YouTube and hit the bell icon so that you get notifications when new shows drop. That stuff is really, really helpful for us. And I know that Mr. Brett agrees.
Absolutely. Reviews are positive. Positive reviews are more positive, but negative ones are as well, because it helps you decide how to focus and how whatever you're intending to say is being heard.
And the secret is the algorithm doesn't care whether the review's positive or negative.
As our friend Mike Norton says regularly, feedback is a gift.
If it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike. Okay, we're back. So what you're talking about there is the Rogerian concept of universal positive regard. You're going to just accept whatever the client is coming in with. So you wouldn't say, if they came in and said, I'm a 3, you wouldn't say, well, I don't really believe in the Enneagram.
So I quibble with the terminology.
Okay.
I don't think it's possible to have universal positive. It may be the goal.
Well, that's
for
just,
Rogers.
yeah. I mean, that's just what he called it.
I know, and that's what I'm saying. I quibble with that. But I think if I'm going to take your money and I'm going to try to be a professional assistance to you, I have to be open to truly understanding who you are. And to do that, I have to do accurate, reflective listening. I have to hear who you are. I get you to tell me and show me who you are. There may be things that I want to challenge and that I may challenge about how you present who you are. But I had a client sent to me who was required to come to me because he had molested a child. I viscerally am opposed to sexual molestation of children.
That is the hardest work.
I found it a real challenge to be in a room with that guy. But week after week after week, we would talk, and we'd talk about what we needed to talk about. And what I found was he was not totally, universally, absolutely reprehensible. And we worked on self-control. We worked on understanding and processing those desires. And we worked on trying to acknowledge that you might have them, but just like I may want to steal a pretty bauble somewhere, but I don't steal it. And you may find yourself attracted to somebody, but you don't act on that attraction. And so that was the agenda for our therapy. And I worked with him for the better part of a year.
So when you say you don't, or you quibble with the designation of universal positive regard, you quibble with the universality of it. You don't think that that's realistic. No one can have universal positive regard.
I think again, it's a distinction between the two of us.
Yeah.
You're looking for a label, and I'm looking for a process.
Okay. So you're more comfortable with the idea of creating a safe emotional holding environment
Yes.
for a client. Yeah. Okay. I got it. I'm on board with what you're saying now.
Yeah.
Okay. But in so doing, then that client would never know that the Enneagram was not something that you didn't love and didn't, at least not initially.
I don't have a problem saying I don't know. I don't understand. I'm ignorant of this. Teach me. Let's find out together. Let's look and see what we can find. I'm not ever unwilling to say, I don't know, because I don't know.
Yeah, right. But with the guy who, because I know a little bit about this story, with the guy who was the sexual offender, you were very clear about setting boundaries in that
that's one
situation.
of the challenges in working with that kind of client. You have to have absolute boundaries, and one of those is I'm required by law, and all the confidentiality rights are exempt. If you cause me to know that there's a specific child in harm's way, I'll call the police, I'll call the state, and say, I know this person is looking at this child who's at risk. Somebody check it out.
But I also know
And he said, I don't like that.
Yeah, I also know that you were very clear with him that if he came in and said, told you about past experiences which didn't put a child currently at risk, that you weren't going to indulge him in saying that this makes me feel like this. And
so for me, the question became one about emotional sensitivity.
Yeah.
If I had the feeling that he was getting off on sharing that information with you, he was re-experiencing his satisfaction or arousal, then I would confront the heck out of that, because you feel it. You feel slimed. And you ask any woman in the world, have you ever felt slimed by some man's sexual attention that was unwelcome? And they will all tell you yes. Now, that doesn't mean that those people touched them or made a move on them, but they can feel it. And so we learned about overt and covert sexual abuse. So overt abuse is when you actually do something. Covert is when you have those feelings and desires, and you may radiate that, but they can't find a hook to hang it on. They're feeling it and they're aware of it, but what are they going to say? And how are they going to out you? And it's a real challenge.
Right.
So as I was trained to expect, this man eventually presented me with that information to test me to see if I would actually follow through. So I did. And that's when I called the police, then that was the end of our relationship, which I had told him at the beginning it would be.
Right.
If you ever make me act on it, I'll act on it, but then I won't see you anymore. It'll be done.
Yeah. And so if I'm trying to think of how I want to phrase this. So, and I want you to know up front that whatever your answer is, it wouldn't change anything that I do. But if you knew someone, let me say this. So if I use the Enneagram as a part of therapy, do you believe that limits my ability to see that individual as a whole person?
I would be concerned.
Okay.
Because I see it as a pigeonhole.
Yeah.
And if you put somebody in a pigeonhole, then you see them as that. It's like the law of the hammer.
Right.
If you give a 3-year-old a hammer, everything is a nail.
Right.
So if you identify me as a 6 on the Enneagram, then that's going to limit your ability to see me in any other way. So I would just say, okay, I hear you and I see why you would say that about me, but is that all you see?
Right. Which is, in a broader conversation, the reason why diagnosing is not always in the best interest of the client, because if you give them a diagnosis, they may
use it.
Yeah.
How many smart kids did you know that said, I can't take algebra because somebody told me I was too stupid to take it?
Yeah.
And you're like, you can take algebra.
Right.
You're not stupid. Oh, yeah, no, I can't do math. They set themselves up for failure.
Well, if I had...
Or they've been set up for failure.
$1 for every client, every male client who said to me, I know this woman, she's borderline, or every female client that said to me, I know this guy and he's a sociopath, because I took a test online, or I tested him online, I'd have a lot of dollars. And so I really, really reject that kind of thinking.
Labeling.
But then at the same time, I do believe in the Enneagram and I do believe in the Myers-Briggs.
It's a helpful tool. It's not an end-all, be-all.
Yeah. And I don't think and maybe I'm narcissistic. We had just talked about this in a previous episode. I don't think that limits my ability to see that individual as a whole person. It helps me understand where I would like to go and the language that I would like to use with that person. But maybe I'm fooling myself. Maybe
that's the whole skill set behind what we call neuro-linguistic programming.
Mm-hmm.
I have to hear from your language how you encounter sensory data.
Mm-hmm.
You see things or feel things or hear things. So then when I'm talking to you, I want to try to use seeing words, feeling words, hearing words, because you will relate to them more comfortably,
right,
and understand me better.
And I was having this conversation with somebody last night, and I was saying, therapy should never be based on the agenda of the therapist.
Absolutely.
And any time that's happening, then you're serving the needs of the therapist, not the needs of the client. And we were talking, and I said, I'm very devoutly Christian. People who know me know that I'm very devoutly Christian. But I said, you probably didn't know that about me. He said, no, I thought you were Buddhist. And I said, because that's a lot of the language that I use, so I understand why you would think that. But I never want to project my agenda onto anybody. So I would never label myself as a Christian therapist because I don't want that preconceived idea.
I've been told that Buddhists say that Christians can comfortably be Buddhists, but that Christians don't say the same thing about Buddhists.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's probably true. I could totally see that. But so I'm hoping that I don't put myself in that position to put blinders on because of the ways in which I conceptualize these individuals. So the question that I have then is, how do you live with that if you don't ever have labels? If everything's amorphous and ethereal and ambiguous, how do you have it? That feels odd to me. That feels unsafe if there's no structure.
I don't need those kind of anchors that you appear to need.
Yeah.
I'm okay with your needing them.
Yeah, no, I know. You don't offend me
that.
when you say that, because you and I have been together for a long time, and I've known that. But I'm really trying to understand, if you don't have that, then how do you? Is there anything that you think is important to understand about the client that you would say is a structural underpinning? I mean, does that make sense, or am I being too esoteric?
I just don't know how to answer the question because I'm not certain what you're asking me to say.
Yeah.
My job, as I conceptualize it, is to create a safe holding environment and learn to hear and see you accurately and reflect that back to you so that you then can make use of it however you will.
Okay. No, you answered it. So, so if I'm hearing you accurately, what I heard you say is that you are a vessel to hold the emotional revelations of the client,
as long as I have good boundaries, absolutely.
Reflect that back to them so that they can use that information, and you want to be very, very careful not to taint what it is that they may be thinking or processing so even if I'm using the Enneagram, I could be creating that agenda that I say I don't want.
How many times have you had a client come in and say, oh, you're going to be really mad at me.
Yeah.
You're going to be really disappointed in me. You're going to be upset with me.
Yeah.
Because of some failing on my partner.
Yeah, all the time.
What have you? And you're like, no, not really.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. That's something people do.
Well, I mean, and especially with like homework, because everybody wants homework, and you and I have had this discussion a million times. We don't see any real value in it, but at the same time, if a client wants it and expects it, I'm certainly willing to assign it. But then they come in and say,
"Will you give me a rabbit's foot to hold till next week?"
I didn't do it. You're going to be mad. I'm like, I'm not going to be mad. Yeah. The only thing I care about is why you didn't do it. I mean, why you're the one who wanted it, and then you didn't do it. Why do you think that is? That's the only thing that matters. Yeah. And I think I'm really, really good about that. But I really do want to examine myself, and if my need to have these labels and to explain these phenomenon is even unintentionally creating an agenda, then I don't want to do that. And
well,
so I
if
want
your
to be
goal
open
is
to
to be like me, then obviously you need to come to grips with that.
Yeah.
But if your goal is just to be the best you there is, then if you find that is more accomplishable with these labels or anchors or things, then use them.
Right. But I'm also very aware that I don't want to change what I do in a way that makes me less effective. Like I feel.
Yeah. Well, that's important. I think.
Yeah. And so if that ambiguity is something that makes me less good at being a therapist, then I don't want to embrace that. But I do want to be open to hearing that using the Enneagram, using the Myers-Briggs, using the MMPI, so for people who don't, the MMPI is the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, using any of those tools, if that's just another way of creating an agenda, then I want to be aware of that. Not that I wouldn't use them, but I want to make sure that I'm not trying to encapsulate the client into a preconceived idea that I have that makes them less able to choose what they want.
Because then you're treating your preconception and not the person in front of you.
That's right. Yeah. And so I want to just be aware of that. I don't, not that I think that I do that, but I definitely, if I'm not open to hearing that and to examining myself, then I think I am less good at being a therapist. Yeah. Okay, hopefully that was something that people enjoyed. I thought that was a great clinical discussion. You learned a lot about me in that one.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about.
That's what it's all about. The music that appears in Psych with Mike is written and performed by Mr. Benjamin DeClue. If you want to get a hold of us, you can reach out to us through psychwithmike.com. If you want to do us a favor, you can go on to the interwebs, find us on Apple Podcasts, leave us a review, and rate us. That helps people find the show, and that is really, really fantastic. You can go on YouTube, find us at Psych with Mike, and subscribe to us there. That would be very, very appreciated. And as always, if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike.